Deep within Mount Qingcheng, where the Qixia stream lay forever shrouded in mist, stood the secluded estate of the Jiang clan's main branch. Pavilions with upturned eaves were set into the mountainside, hidden among ancient trees and strange flowers. The air itself seemed to hum with spiritual energy. Jiang Wu was crouched in a small spirit garden, barefoot, the sleeves of her plain white Taoist robe rolled to her elbows. Her forearm, pale as jade, gleamed where sunlight filtered through the branches. Before her grew several Ninglu grass plants, their leaf edges traced with delicate golden patterns. She was carefully loosening the spirit-rich soil with a small jade trowel, her fingers passing over the tender shoots with almost reverent concentration. This was her small world, removed from the clan's rigorous cultivation lessons and her elders' expectations. Light and shadow dappled her exquisite profile. Long black lashes lowered, a straight nose, lips the color of pale cherries. When silent, she gave off a cool, detached air, like a mountain spring untouched by dust. A woo! A clear, authoritative voice cut the quiet. A woman in an ornate Western-style gown walked the bluestone path, her skirt brushing the dew-damp grass. Her face had the sharp, aristocratic lines of a British noblewoman, platinum hair pinned into a precise coil, and sapphire blue eyes, keen as cornflower gems, an odd presence in this eastern sanctuary. This was Isabella Jiang, née Bones, a scion of the Bones family, a collateral branch of the House of Black, one of the venerable pure-blood families of the British wizarding world. Still fussing with herbs? Isabella's delicate brows drew together in disapproval. Her questions came rapid and clipped, each one a reprimand. How far along with the third level of the Qi guiding art your father has been teaching you? Have you begun previewing the standard book of spells, grade 1 your uncle sent? There's the family contest next month. Have you prepared? Mother, Jiangwu glanced up. Her voice was clear and cool as mountain water. The Ninglu grass is about to bloom. The dew it gathers during flowering has miraculous properties for stabilizing the heart meridian. She skirted the subject of cultivation exams with a simple statement of fact. Her face showed no flare of defiance, only clarity. Isabella opened her mouth to press further when a sharp bird call split the air. A streak of golden light, like an arrow loosed from a bow, pierced Qixia Stream's protective barrier and dove straight for the spirit garden. "Watch out!" Isabella snapped, and her hand flashed to the wand in her sleeve. The golden light did not strike. It circled once and settled on the warm bluestone before Jiangwu. A magnificent bird alighted there, larger than a hawk, its feathers molten gold, tail plumes trailing a faint rainbow. It carried itself with proud composure, its golden eyes glancing disdainfully at Isabella's wand before turning to Jiangwu and tapping its beak. Clutched in the bird's talons was a scroll wrapped in deep purple cloud brocade, sealed with golden thread. The scroll pulsed with a foreign, ancient magic that resonated softly with the spirit of Qixia Stream. Jiangwu felt a strange flutter in her chest. She extended her hand, the bird relaxed its grip, and the scroll fell into her palm. It was cool and slightly heavy. The brocade was of a weave she had never seen. She untied the golden thread and unrolled the parchment. Deep green ink traced elegant Western calligraphy across pearlescent paper. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Principal, Albus Dumbledore. Below was the familiar list of robes, textbooks, and a cauldron. The address line read unmistakably, Miss Jiang Wu Jiang Clan Spiritual Garden, Qixia Stream, Mount Qingcheng, Sichuan, China. It had found this place, had found her garden. Before she could take it in, something slipped from the scroll and landed in her soil-stained palm. A seed. No bigger than a fingernail, its surface glowed like glazed stone. Inside it seemed a miniature nebula swirled, colors shifting in slow halos. It radiated a restrained, immense vitality. Even the nearby Ninglu grass trembled and leaned toward it, greedily drinking in the escaping energy. Hogwarts. Isabella's voice rose, shocked and affronted. They sent a letter to the Jiang ancestral home? And with an eastern golden-feathered bird? Dumbledore is becoming audacious. She hurried forward and took the scroll, scanning it with sharp blue eyes. Her jaw tightened when she read phrases like dangerous magical creatures and restrictions for underage wizards. Preposterous. Dangerous, she snapped. The direct heir of the Jiang family, sent to learn a bunch of wand-waving tricks? Absolutely not. She reached to snatch the seed as well. Breathing earth seed? A calm male voice spoke, quiet with surprise. Jiang Heng, Jiang Wu's father, had appeared without their noticing. He wore a green Taoist robe and moved with the quiet grace of mountain bamboo. His eyes were deep and fathomless. They were not on the letter, but fixed steadily on the tiny seed in Jiang Wu's hand. He stepped up, took the seed between two fingers, and held it to the light. The glazed skin transmitted sunlight into shifting patterns across his palm. "Father," Jiang Wu said softly. "Breathing earth," Jiang Heng murmured, reverent and distant. "Legend says it fell from the 9 heavens, a divine essence of earth that can spontaneously generate life and never runs dry. It is barely mentioned in the oldest texts. I never imagined it would appear as a seed." He glanced at the acceptance parchment, and then at his wife. Hogwarts. Such a grand gesture. Such intention. He looked to Isabella with steady calm. "This is an opportunity, Isabella. It is Hogwarts' recognition of the other half of a Wu's bloodline. It may be a path she is meant to walk." Isabella's expression shifted. She regarded the dreamlike seed in his palm, then her daughter's cool, clear face, where something like a spark had just brightened her eyes. Isabella pursed her lips, snorted, and withdrew her wand. Her skirt swept the bluestone as she turned away, delivering a final curt remark. "Then do as you please." Jiang Heng shook his head and, with a small smile, placed the breathing earth seed back in Jiang Wu's hand. "Keep it safe," he said softly. "If this truly came from your mother's family, perhaps it is a belated gift." He folded the acceptance letter and set it aside. "Prepare yourself, O Wu. In the end, you must walk your own road. This Western school of magic may well corroborate our Taoist teachings." Jiang Wu closed her fingers around the warm, slightly cool seed. The colors inside it flowed through her palm. Hogwarts, the world of her mother's other bloodline, had opened its door to her so plainly and insistently for the first time. Her heart beat faster, not with fear, but with a stirring curiosity and an unnameable thrill. Her gaze drifted beyond the spirit garden to the cloud-wreathed path that led out into the wider world. Chapter 2. Ripples in Diagon Alley. Jiang Wu's arrival in London was almost anticlimactic. Her father had drawn a shrinking-the-ground-to-an-inch talisman, and in an instant she went from a mist-veiled room on Mount Qingcheng to a dark, damp alley in the heart of the city. When the greasy, dim facade of the leaky cauldron loomed into view, she tightened the plain, unadorned cloak about her shoulders, careful to hide the noble bearing she carried as a woman of a cultivation family. Inside the pub, a strange mix of cheap alcohol, old wood, and the musk of magical creatures hit her. The oddly dressed witches and wizards glanced her way with curiosity or confusion. Jiang Wu walked straight to the bar, kept her gaze steady, and addressed Old Tom in fluent English, the words tinged with a cool, distant Eastern inflection. "Diagon Alley entrance, please." Old Tom's cloudy eyes swept over her, asked no questions, and with his gnarled fingers tapped the brick wall that led into the magical world. In an instant, the bustle and color of Diagon Alley opened up around her. This place was nothing like the ethereal, otherworldly aura of Chixia Stream. It was a marketplace of magic, full of life, oddities, and commerce. Jiang Wu moved through it quietly, like a drop of water slipping into the ocean. At Madame Malkin's robes for all occasions, the self-measuring tape slid around her as if to take stock of her. The subtle spiritual energy within her stirred and flowed, and the tape's motions softened, inexplicably gentler. In flourish and blots, she chose the basics, Standard Book of Spells, Grade 1, and paused over a volume titled Eastern Magical Plants and Their Magical Applications before returning it to the shelf. The real disturbance, however, was at Ollivander's. When she pushed open the creaking, dust-heavy door, the narrow, shadowed shop, stacked floor-to-ceiling with wand boxes, seemed to be cleansed by an invisible current. Years of settled dust shivered and fell away. Old Ollivander's pale, silver eyes snapped to her like twin searchlights, registering astonishment, disbelief, and an almost childlike excitement. "Ah, a most extraordinary young lady," he breathed, his voice papery as if blown through old parchment. "Powerful vitality, and a singular harmony, east and west, the blending of old bloodlines." He muttered to himself as he rummaged through the towers of boxes, dust cascading down in a shower. He handed her wand after wand. A hawthorn stick stirred up a gentle breeze. A cherry wand caused a withered potted plant in the corner to green briefly. A U gave a low, resonant hum. Ollivander's eyes gleamed brighter with each try, until he finally reached for a long box tucked deep in the farthest, dustiest recess. It was wrapped in a strip of dark silk, its grain and sheen unmistakably Eastern. "Try this one," he said, his voice trembling just slightly. 13 inches, laurel wood. The core is very special, a combination of the tail-tip spiritual hair of an ancient Eastern beast called the Fuju and a phoenix feather. My grandfather labored over it. It lay dormant. No one has ever fully awakened it. When Jiangwu's fingers closed around the wand's dark, warm, jade-like shaft, something stirred. There was no dramatic explosion. Instead, a pure, vibrant green energy, like a river thawing in spring, flowed gently and firmly from the tip. It swept through the little shop at once. On the surfaces of the dusty wand boxes, tiny green shoots pushed through. The withered plant in the corner burst into new branches so fast a pink bud appeared at its tip. Wands long sealed on the shelves seemed infused with life, emitting low, joyful vibrations. The whole shop filled with a fresh, intoxicating scent, forest after rain, mingled with the clean, medicinal note of herbs. Ollivander stood motionless, mouth open, his silver eyes wide. He stared at the laurel wand in Jiangwu's hand as if it had come alive, the shaft glowing with a warm jade sheen, its core showing a faint, shimmering blend of bluish-white and golden red. "Life, a hymn to life," the old wandmaker finally managed, nearly incoherent with excitement. "Such pure, majestic life force. The wand resonates perfectly. Child, you are nature's favorite. This wand chose you. No, it has waited for you to awaken it." His gaze on her was full of a reverent, almost frantic awe. Laurel stands for glory and victory. Fuju is a spirit beast that summons great waves. The phoenix is rebirth itself, and you, this blend, these seeming contradictions coexisting. It's as if fate itself has made a perfect match. Jiangwu felt the wand's warmth pulse against her palm like a blood tie, the majestic life energy melding with the cool clarity of her own spiritual core. The wand felt like a key, opening a door to deeper mysteries of this magical world. Her face stayed composed, emotion unreadable, but in her eyes the small flame of anticipation brightened. Western magic, she thought, was far more interesting than she'd expected. Chapter 3. First encounter on the platform. The Scarlet Hogwarts Express hissed and steamed as it pulled away from the bustling platforms of King's Cross. Jiangwu sat alone in a window compartment, having changed into a new black Hogwarts robe that set off her porcelain skin and a cascade of black hair. She watched the English countryside blur past, fingers brushing the warm, breathing earth seed tucked in her sleeve and the laurelwood wand attuned to her aura at her side. The noise and bustle outside the compartment door felt faint and distant, until the door was pushed open. "Excuse me, are there any empty seats here? Everywhere else is." A boy with unruly black hair and round glasses poked his head in, his green eyes apologetic and travel-worn. Behind him came a girl with bushy hair and slightly protruding front teeth, and a tall, red-haired boy with smudged chocolate on his face. Jiangwu's gaze swept over them calmly. Harry Potter, Hermione Granger, and Ron Weasley. She nodded and moved to make room, her movements effortless, like flowing water. "Thanks." Hermione slipped in briskly, setting down a heavy bag. Her eyes lingered on Jiangwu with the sharp curiosity of a scholar. Ron dropped into the seat and immediately began rifling through a bag of snacks. Harry looked distracted. "I'm Hermione Granger," Hermione said, trying to be friendly. "This is Harry Potter and Ron Weasley. Are you a new student?" Jiangwu turned from the window and met Hermione's gaze. It was cool and clear, and she inclined her head slightly. "Jiangwu," she said, her voice cool as a chime of jade. "Jiangwu? Brilliant," Ron mumbled, tearing open a chocolate frog wrapper. "Are you from the East, China, Japan?" A chocolate frog hopped out at that moment, and he fumbled to catch it. Hermione frowned as if searching her memory. "Jiang, I don't think I've heard that surname in the wizarding world. Are you Muggle? Oh, sorry, I mean from a non-magical family?" Jiangwu nodded once. "China." Her attention drifted to the struggling chocolate frog, then slid back to the window. Her silence and composed reserve created an invisible barrier. Ron and Harry exchanged a look that said she wasn't easy to approach. Hermione pursed her lips and let the subject drop. The compartment settled into the sound of Ron chewing and the steady clack of the train. At dusk, the train pulled into Hogsmeade Station. A cold wind off the black lake swept the platform, and Hagrid's booming voice rose above the crowd. Jiang Wu followed the flow of new students down the slick stone steps, tension coiling in her at the unfamiliar surroundings and the press of people. A large, warm hand steadied her elbow as she slipped slightly on the cobbles. "Careful, the steps are very slippery." The voice beside her was gentle and steady. Jiang Wu looked up. Under the flicker of a lantern, an older student looked down at her. His hair was soft and short, dark brown, his nose straight, his jaw defined yet gentle. Most striking were his eyes, deep hazel, like warm amber that had caught autumn sunlight, filled with genuine kindness. He wore a neat black robe, and a yellow and black badge shaped like a badger shone on his chest. He gave off a calm, reliable presence, the sort of steadiness that grounded others. Despite the self-control she had cultivated, Jiang Wu felt her heart skip. The thank you she meant to say stuck in her throat. A small, unfamiliar fluster rose in her, something she'd never felt even around elders or fellow disciples. She managed only a quick, minimal nod, a barely visible flush coloring her cheeks before she dropped her gaze to her spotless shoelaces. "Just follow Hagrid's lamp. Don't be nervous." The student, Cedric Diggory, she heard nearby students whisper, didn't seem to notice her silence and went on to help other new arrivals. The boat swayed across the ink-dark lake toward the enormous, brightly lit castle that gleamed like a dream in the water. Jiang Wu sat at the bow, the cold wind brushing the tips of her ears. Her eyes kept drifting to the tall figure ahead, straight as a pine and lit by lamplight. The badger badge on his chest was like a small, warm star, sending quiet ripples through her chest. Chapter 4. New Life in Badger's Nest. Even Jiang Wu, who had seen the wonders of immortal realms, found the grandeur of Hogwarts' Great Hall and its star-studded, enchanted ceiling moving. Still, the solemn gravity of the sorting ceremony pressed on the room like an invisible weight, and her fingers, resting in her lap, curled just a little. Names were called one by one, and the long tables erupted in cheers. Finally, Jiang Wu! The name, carrying an Eastern cadence, rolled through the hushed hall and drew countless curious, scrutinizing looks. Her face remained composed as she rose and walked with measured grace toward the high stool in the center. The bright lights only seemed to heighten her cool, elegant bearing. Professor McGonagall set the sorting hat on her head. The brim blocked her sight, and a musty, familiar smell filled her nostrils. A voice, subtle and astonished, spoke directly into her mind. "Oh, what a remarkable soul! Vast life origin, pure soul power, a rare fusion of Eastern and Western magical bloodlines, simply unheard of. Great thirst for knowledge, yet not confined to form, drawn more to practice and insight. Deep within, a yearning for peaceful belonging. Warm soil, the joy of resonating with all living things." The hat's thoughts reached into her consciousness like delicate tendrils. Ah, such pure love, such a resilient yet gentle nature, a powerful talent for communicating with nature. This is... It seemed to take a breath then, with an unprecedentedly loud, certain voice full of wonder, it declared, "Hufflepuff." "Yay!" The Hufflepuff table erupted in thunderous, wholehearted applause, the cheering so vigorous it might have lifted the ceiling. The prefects jumped to their feet, clapping, faces open and sincere. In that moment, the warmth and inclusiveness of the Badgers shone through completely. Jiang Wu lifted the hat and stepped toward the surging yellow and black sea. Her face stayed largely unreadable, but a faint expression, relief, touched her cool eyes like the first ripple across thawing ice. The house's aura reminded her of the nourishing springs and fertile soil of Chia Stream, quiet, steady, and sustaining. As she walked to the table, her gaze swept the crowd. He was there, Cedric Diggory, standing near the front of the Hufflepuff table, applauding with that bright, earnest, sun-like smile. His hazel eyes gleamed under the great hall lights. Their eyes met. He gave a small nod, the smile deepening into a clear, silent welcome. Welcome to Hufflepuff. His look felt like the first warm ray of spring sunlight. A small ripple moved through Jiang Wu's heart. She lowered her lashes. They fluttered like butterfly wings, hiding the momentary stir in her eyes. Her steps, without quite meaning to, lightened as she merged into the enthusiastic, warm embrace of the Badgers. Her Hogwarts life had officially begun. In her sleeve pocket, the breathing earth seed gave off a faint warmth, answering the ancient castle's ley lines in a subtle, private resonance. Chapter 5. Chinese Minor Tune in the Greenhouse. The Hufflepuff common room sat in the castle's basement, warm and comfortable, redolent with the scent of earth and baking. It was circular, with a low ceiling and huge yellow barrel-like porthole windows through which water plants swayed and creatures from the Black Lake occasionally drifted by. Thick, soft sofas and a crackling fireplace, all piled with fluffy cushions, made the place homely. Jiang Wu quickly claimed a bed by a small porthole, where she could see a patch of strange, glowing moss clinging to the lake bed, protected by enchantments and stubbornly thriving in the deep. Her doormates were friendly and curious, but Jiang Wu's naturally cool aloofness and her habit of lingering in a corner or staring out at the lake made them reluctant to press her. She liked the peace. Most of her thoughts were on the breathing earth seed tucked in her sleeve, the wand in her pocket, and the classes about to begin. In charms, Professor Flitwick stood on a stack of books explaining the levitation charm. Jiang Wu concentrated, twirling her laurelwood wand between her fingers with an almost Eastern rhythm, as if tracing an invisible talisman. "Wingardium Leviosa," she said, voice cool and steady. Magic flowed from the tip of her wand, pure and controlled. The feather in front of her didn't spring up in a sudden burst like some of the others. Instead, it rose on an invisible current, floating steadily and even swaying with the faintest movement of her will. Flitwick pushed his glasses up in surprise, his tiny eyes sparkling. "Oh, perfect control. Miss Jiang, absolutely brilliant. 5 points to Hufflepuff." In Transfiguration, Professor McGonagall sternly demonstrated how to transfigure a match into a needle. Jiang Wu watched the silver needle on the podium and thought of her father's precise control in the stone-to-gold talisman art. She tapped the match lightly with her wand, not striving for a razor edge but concentrating on the material's essential change. Magic was infused evenly. The match lost its color, a metallic sheen spread, and at last a silvery needle formed, bright and flawless, if not quite sharp. McGonagall's sharp gaze lingered on her. She nodded ever so slightly. No points were announced, but there was a faint, almost imperceptible approval in the professor's eyes. Still, the place where Jiang Wu felt most at home, and where a genuine, if slight, expression of pleasure crossed her cool features, was Professor Sprout's greenhouse. The air there was warm and humid, thick with the rich smell of soil, humus, and 1,000 different plants. When Professor Sprout, wearing heavy dragonhide gloves, began to pull a struggling mandrake seedling from its pot to transplant it, the creature's screams nearly lifted the glass roof. The students clapped their hands over their ears. Jiang Wu's gaze, however, went to the writhing, outrageously noisy little thing. What she felt wasn't fear, but a strange familiarity. The vitality in her and the spirit of her wand seemed to sense the mandrake's fright. Almost without thinking, she stepped forward. To the astonishment of Sprout and the class, she did not put on earmuffs. She leaned down and began to hum softly in a low, cool voice, an ancient folk tune from Hogwarts. There were no words, only a clear, graceful melody, like the tinkling of a mountain spring, carrying a calming, nourishing power. Her song was quiet, yet it cut through the mandrake's screams. A little miracle happened. The wildly flailing seedling slowed. Its piercing cry dropped in pitch, melted into disgruntled whimpers, and finally fell silent. Its round, muddy face, if one could call it a face, creased with an almost displeased expression, but it seemed to be listening. The greenhouse went completely still. Everyone stood dumbfounded, including the experienced Professor Sprout, who held the unexpectedly well-behaved mandrake, gloves still on, mouth open in astonishment. Jiang Wu stopped humming, as if only then realizing what she had done. She straightened, expression composed, as if she had merely brushed a speck of dust from her sleeve. Only the faint afterglow on her fingertips betrayed the magic she'd just used. "Merlin's beard," Professor Sprout finally managed, her cheeks flushed with excitement. "Miss Jiang, how did you do that? This is incredible. Mandrakes have never reacted to singing like this. And it's an Eastern song?" Her eyes shone with the thrill of discovery. It seems to prefer quiet," Jiang Wu replied calmly, as if stating a simple fact. The other students snapped out of their stupor and began to buzz, staring at Jiang Wu with admiration. A Hufflepuff boy slapped his friend's shoulder. "Did you see that? She made that screaming monster shut up." Quiet, quiet. Sprout tried to restore order but couldn't hide her smile. 10 points to Hufflepuff for Miss Jiang's extraordinary, soothing technique. She placed the unusually calm mandrake into a fresh compost pot with the gentlest hands, and the creature cooperatively settled itself and played dead. Cedric Diggory, serving as a senior herbology assistant, had been patrolling nearby and watched the whole scene. He stood a few steps away, hazel eyes fixed on Jiangwu's cool figure, his face openly admiring. When Jiangwu glanced past him, he smiled and mouthed silently, "That was brilliant." For an instant, Jiangwu felt her heart beat a fraction faster. She dropped her lashes and turned her attention back to the thriving green around her, as if the episode had been nothing more than a brief note between lessons. Only she knew that the breathing earth seed inside her sleeve had warmed, faintly and very pleasantly, while she hummed. Chapter 6. Jiang Long's Manure and the Unexpected Invitation. Jiang Wu's extraordinary performance in herbology had quickly earned her a mildly awed nickname in Hufflepuff, the Mandrake Calmer. She herself was unaware of the title and went about her quiet, solitary life, keeping to a simple routine between the classroom, the greenhouse, the library, and the common room. Only in the greenhouses, when facing those peculiar or dangerous magical plants, did a trace of almost devout concentration and a faint tenderness show in her cool, clear eyes. This afternoon, with no lessons to attend, she had come again to the third greenhouse, where the more delicate and occasionally hazardous specimens were kept. She settled into a sunny corner that had quietly become hers. Professor Sprout had tacitly approved a special blend of soil there, ordinary compost mixed with a hint of breathing earth seed essence, which carried a subtle, lively warmth. From a small, finely made cloth pouch at her side, an oriental pouch enchanted with an undetectable extension charm, she took out several seeds. They were not typical magical plant seeds, but spiritual seeds from Chixia Stream, a few plump Ninglu grass seeds that glowed with a faint purple halo, and several Taixian vine seeds with shells as hard as obsidian. She wanted to see how these eastern spiritual plants would fare in Hogwarts soil and climate. Rolling up the sleeves of her robe, she revealed a pale forearm, picked up a trowel, and began to loosen the earth and dig holes. Her movements were precise and gentle, like a ritual, fluid and quietly beautiful. Sunlight filtered through the dome of the greenhouse, outlining her cool profile in gold. Her dark lashes cast soft shadows, and her focused expression was like a calm painting. Just as she finished burying the last Taixian seed and prepared to thread a faint strand of spiritual energy to encourage germination, a clear, pleasant voice spoke behind her, measured and unobtrusive. "Do you need any help, Miss Jiang?" Jiangwu paused. The spark of energy at her fingertips faded. She turned. Cedric Diggory stood a few steps away, smiling, warm, unforced, his brown eyes bright in the greenhouse light. He was holding a heavy wooden bucket of dark brown pellets that gave off a distinctly organic, earthy smell. "This is freshly processed dragon dung," he said, tipping the bucket slightly as if to prove its weight, his smile honest and unselfconscious. "Professor Sprout asked me to give the screaming violets some extra nutrients. I noticed you've planted something new here? Dragon dung is good for plants that need strong roots. It's gentle and won't burn them." He pointed at the newly turned soil. Dragon dung. Jiangwu looked at the granules. She had no objection to fertilizer. Back in Chixia Stream, the droppings of spiritual beasts made excellent nutrient, but the scent was certainly more robust than the gentler crane dung she was used to. "Thank you," she said at last. Her voice was still cool, but a shade less distant than usual. "They're seeds from my homeland." She did not elaborate. "From the east?" Cedric stepped a little closer, set the bucket down, and peered at the soil with genuine curiosity. "Professor Sprout has wanted to introduce more species from the east, but many don't adapt well here. Your technique looks different." He noticed the unusual texture of the soil and the faint life force it emitted. Jiang Wu merely answered with a soft, measured and picked up a small watering can to moisten the beds. The water fell in a quiet, even stream. Cedric crouched, unperturbed by her reserve, and with the practiced movements of someone who had done this often, he scooped a shovelful of the dragon dung and scattered it evenly around the seeds. They worked in companionable silence, the only sounds the rustle of leaves, the faint creak of the watering can, and the unmistakable presence that seemed to radiate from the bucket of fertilizer. "Your wand," Cedric said suddenly, breaking the calm. His gaze had drifted to a laurelwood wand lying on a nearby bench. "It's very special. Laurel is uncommon. It feels gentle and strong, full of life, like what you did in herbology." His tone held straightforward admiration. Jiang Wu paused with the can midstream. She hadn't expected him to notice the wand or to have so keen a sense. She turned and regarded him more fully for the first time. His eyes were clear and open, a warmth that made it easy to trust him. "It is called Qinglin," she answered softly. It was the name she had given her wand. Qinglin, rain from a clear sky, nurturing all things. "Qinglin," Cedric repeated, the name lighting his face. "That's beautiful, like the first gentle rain of spring." He smiled, an open, hopeful expression. "Miss Jiang, Professor Sprout has been trying to cultivate a delicate strain of moon petal that needs incredibly fine sensitivity to life energy. Progress has been slow. Would you be interested in helping in the greenhouse during your free time? Professor Sprout thinks you might bring new ideas. There's house points, of course." He added, almost as an afterthought, "I'm helping with that part of the project, too." His invitation was straightforward, sincere, and carried a faint note of anticipation. The greenhouse was a place she liked. Experimenting with new magical plants intrigued her. Under Cedric's warm gaze, Jiang Wu felt a small, private quickening in her chest. Her fingers tightened imperceptibly on the watering can. She looked at him, and in her cool, clear eyes, a nearly invisible ripple passed. She nodded once, quietly, and her voice, though calm, softened a hair. "All right." Cedric's smile opened like sunlight. "That's wonderful. Then, after class tomorrow afternoon, meet me in the greenhouse?" She nodded again and turned back to finish watering, her motions steady and careful. Only the faint pink at the tips of her ears, warmed by the greenhouse sun, betrayed that she was not as composed as she seemed. The breathing earth seed in her sleeve pocket seemed to sense the shift too. It gave off a comfortable little warmth once more. Chapter 7. Jiang Kitchen and the Spiritual Fertilizer Controversy. After Jiang Wu accepted Cedric's invitation to be a greenhouse assistant, her life settled into a steady routine. She found that Cedric was not only popular and capable, but also had a solid grounding in herbology, patient in his explanations, and deft in his hands. They worked together in the greenhouse with a quiet, tacit understanding. Jiang Wu used her keen sense for life energy to adjust the magical field around the moon petal variant and to try feeding the soil with a faint breath of Shi Rang. Cedric recorded data, prepared nutrient solutions, and handled the physical care. Their exchanges were minimal and almost always about the plants. Jiang Wu still spoke little, but Cedric could read her meaning from the smallest expression or movement. This afternoon, after class, she did not go straight to the greenhouse. Guided by her natural sensitivity to earth chi and vitality, she found herself at the entrance to the Hogwarts kitchens, the huge still-life painting of fruit. She gently scratched the emerald pear. It smiled and transformed into a brass door knocker. The sight of the kitchens slightly surprised Jiang Wu, who was used to immortal delicacies. Hundreds of house elves, each with a neatly folded tea towel, moved like precise instruments through the space. The air was thick with tempting aromas. She was there for scraps. The faint magic lingering in Hogwarts' banquet ingredients could serve as auxiliary, spiritual fertilizer for her cultivation of spirit plants. The house elves were both curious and deferential toward this composed, elegant Eastern witch, whose eyes softened when she looked at plants. When Jiang Wu asked calmly if there were any discarded bits that still held magic, old roots, vegetable remnants, eggshells, a house elf with exceptionally large eyes, who introduced herself as Shining, hurried over with a large basket of neatly prepared pumpkin roots, withered mandrake leaves, and leftover unicorn alfalfa stalks. "Kind, special miss. Shining has gotten it ready for you. Shining is very happy to help." Shining's big eyes blinked rapidly. "Thank you." Jiang Wu nodded and took from her pouch a few small Ninglu grass seedlings she had cultivated, each infused with gentle spiritual energy, as a gift in return. The house elves leaned in to inhale the fresh scent of the seedlings and their golden veins. They perked up and bowed repeatedly. Just as Jiang Wu was about to leave with her spiritual fertilizer, a commotion erupted at the kitchen entrance. A high-pitched, righteous voice cut through the clatter. House elves have been enslaved for centuries. They need freedom. They need wages. They need rest. Hermione Granger was trying to place a crooked hand-knitted hat on the head of a terrified, retreating house elf. "Hermione, please, leave them alone." Ron trailed behind, wincing and trying to pull her back. "Look, they're all terrified." Harry stood helplessly to one side, trying to reassure a house elf that they meant no harm. The kitchens instantly fell into chaos. House elves shrieked and dodged Hermione's hat offensive. Some began banging their heads against the walls in fear. Jiang Wu frowned slightly. She held no strong ideological position on slavery. The Jiang clan kept spirit servants too, but their relationship was more symbiotic. But this uproar threatened the stability of the spiritual fertilizer and disturbed the house elves' emotional balance. Cradling the basket, she moved around the center of the chaos. Her composed figure parted the panicked crowd like a calm current. She approached the trembling house elf Hermione had been targeting, placed a small Ninglu grass seedling into its shaking hand, and said in a calm, unwavering voice, "Hold this. It will soothe you." The house elf froze. The cool, soothing spiritual energy that flowed from the seedling immediately eased much of its fear, and it stared at Jiang Wu in blank wonder. Hermione paused mid-gesture, interrupted by the presence of this strange, different girl. Jiang Wu's eyes flicked to the wool hat in Hermione's hand, then swept over the frightened house elves before settling on Hermione's face. In her clear, unadorned tone, she stated a plain fact. They don't like hats. Fear will contaminate food with bad energy. Without waiting for Hermione to answer and ignoring the stunned Ron and Harry, Jiang Wu turned and left the kitchens with her basket. Hermione stood frozen, clutching the knitted hat, her face flushing through red and white, struck by a perspective she had not considered before. That fear can taint food with harmful energy. Chapter 8. The Twins' Fertilizer Experiment and Quidditch Incident. Jiang Wu carefully mixed the spirit fertilizer into the little experimental plot in the corner of the greenhouse. As she expected, the Ninglu grass and Texian vine seedlings visibly leapt into life. The faint purple halo and the dark sheen on the obsidian-like surface of the vines intensified. The sight put her in a good mood, until that calm was abruptly shattered. The culprits were, of course, the ever-over-energetic Weasley twins. Fred and George's curiosity could outmatch a troll's, and through some channel, most likely overhearing Hermione complain in the common room about Oriental magical fertilizer, they had learned Jiang Wu had acquired special materials from the kitchens and managed to cultivate glowing grass. In the twins' scientific imaginations, that translated immediately into excellent raw material for new prank products. One afternoon, while Jiang Wu had left the greenhouse to return books to the library, Fred and George slipped in and headed straight for the small bucket of mixed spirit fertilizer beside her plot. "That's it, George, that shimmering, mysterious mixture." "It smells like nature's bounty," George said, masking the odor of wet soil and rotting roots. "How about adding some booba-tuber pus? That would be explosive." "Great idea, Fred, and sprinkle some skeving snack box powder on it. Whoever eats it will glow while running." They began rummaging through their bags for bottles and jars. Then a clear, icy voice cut through the greenhouse. "Stop!" Jiang Wu had returned without their noticing, carrying several heavy books. Sunlight filtered through the glass roof and haloed her silhouette. Her expression was calm and unruffled, but the twins felt an inexplicable chill. "Oh, hey, Jiang!" Fred flashed his signature grin, trying to look harmless. "We were just, testing the improved effects of the fertilizer for you." "Right, improving it," George chimed in. Jiang Wu's gaze swept over the boobo-tuber pus bottle, emitting a foul reek, and the colorful powders in their hands, then settled on her spirit fertilizer bucket. She didn't shout or scold. She walked forward, crouched, extended an index finger, and summoned a faint thread of vital spiritual energy to the tip of her finger. She touched the rim of the bucket lightly. Instantly, the previously calm mixture seemed to awaken. A surge of life energy, mingled with the fresh scent of earth and plants, swelled outward in an invisible vortex. The jars in the twins' hands clattered to the floor. The pus and powder inside were swept up, decomposed, and purified by the life force. Even the foul smell vanished as if it had never been. A nearby wilting tentacula seedling that was brushed by the aura straightened, its stem firming, buds unfurling, its green deepened, and it bloomed a small, dangerous, but beautiful flower. Fred and George stood open-mouthed, utterly dumbfounded. Jiangwu rose, brushed non-existent dust from her hands, and in the same cool, steady voice, explained the consequences. Your improver would be broken down. If added directly, the life energy in the fertilizer would become unstable and explode. The effect would be similar to what you see here. She pointed to the invigorated tentacula, but the target would be anyone who accidentally ingested or touched it. Their body would be flooded with uncontrolled vitality, perhaps for a week. Their skin could glow. The twins pictured themselves writhing uncontrollably, their bodies overflowing with literal plant-like vigor and glowing for days. They shivered at once, their playful eyes switching to a look of deep reverence, coupled with something like fanatic excitement. This was not mere fertilizer. It was a prankster's dream of biochemical proportions. Provided, of course, you survived long enough to study it. Sorry, Jiang, Fred said quickly, yanking the still-stunned George to his feet. We just remembered Quidditch practice. Right, practice. They fled the greenhouse as if the ceiling were falling in, even forgetting to pick up the bottles. Jiangwu watched their disheveled backs, then bent to retrieve the bottles they'd left behind. She tossed them into the designated waste disposal bin and returned to tending her spiritual plants. For a heartbeat, a nearly imperceptible flicker of mischief crossed her face before she settled back into calm. A few days later came the first Quidditch match of the school year, Gryffindor versus Hufflepuff. Jiangwu had little interest in broom flying, but as a Hufflepuff, she had been dragged to the stands by her enthusiastic roommate, Hannah Abbott. The match was fierce. Harry Potter, as Gryffindor's seeker, had the golden snitch almost within reach and was diving at full speed. Cedric Diggory, Hufflepuff's seeker and captain, was coming in from the other side with astonishing speed and skill. The two were neck and neck, heading straight for the snitch. The stands roared. Jiangwu's eyes followed that quick, steady streak of gold and black. Then an out-of-control bludger, later revealed to be a Slytherin trick, sliced through the air and hurtled toward Cedric's back. "Cedric, watch out!" A wave of alarm rose from the Hufflepuff section. Jiangwu felt her heart leap into her throat. A reflexive urge to circulate spiritual energy rose in her, but reason held her back. Using her Taoist magic in plain view was out of the question. At the last possible moment, Cedric seemed to have eyes in the back of his head. He pulled off a hair-raising Wronski feint, twisting his broom almost perpendicular to the ground so the bludger whistled past the tip of his broom. Using the momentum of the maneuver, his arm shot forward like lightning. "He's caught it!" Cedric Diggory has caught the golden snitch. Hufflepuff wins. Lee Jordan's shout was hoarse with excitement. The Hufflepuff stands erupted. The cheers nearly lifted the roof. Jiangwu watched Cedric fly around the pitch, the snitch held high, sweat on his brow and a brilliant sunlit smile on his face as thunderous applause followed him. Her tense pulse finally eased. She let out a quiet breath, and the corners of her mouth curved upward for a bare instant, so fleeting it might have been imagined. Only she knew how fast her heart had been beating in that moment. Chapter 9. Biochemical Weapons on Halloween Eve. On the eve of Halloween, the castle was decked out in giant jack-o'-lanterns and paper bats. The halls hummed with a spooky, festive energy. The great hall brimmed with the sweet smell of roasted pumpkins and candy as the feast was about to begin. But for Jiangwu, the thing that mattered most that evening wasn't the banquet at all. It was a long-awaited package that had finally arrived from Qixia Stream. Her mother, despite some reluctance, had sent hometown specialties: top-quality dried rice noodles, sour bamboo shoots, long beans, fried tofu skin, and a small sealed jar of snail noodle soup base with an unmistakable soulful scent. Homesickness, mostly a craving, won out over concern for social niceties. Jiangwu decided, tonight, by the warm common room fire, she would make herself a proper meal. Using a trusty cauldron she'd picked up in potions class, she set water to boil and lit a controlled magic flame. When she broke the seal on the jar, the concentrated, penetrating aroma burst out like a long, dormant beast waking from sleep. It did not sneak politely through the air. It announced itself. Ugh, what is that smell? Someone cried. Merlin's stinky socks. Did someone blow up the loo? Another shouted. Peeves! It must be Peeves! The normally cozy Hufflepuff common room dissolved into pandemonium. Students pinched their noses and stared around in horror, hunting for the source. Even the fat friar's ghost, who normally floated serenely through the room, made a comical face and slipped through a wall in a hurry. Jiang Wu remained calm, almost statuesque. She added the dried rice noodles to the pot, then the sour bamboo shoots, the long beans, and finally the strips of fried tofu skin. With each addition, the broth's potency deepened. Above the cauldron, a thin, pale green wisp condensed into a visible mist, sharp and sour. Ow! A high, distorted scream cut through the room. Peeves, who had been hovering near a keyhole to cause mischief, was hit full on by the wafting vapor. If a ghost could go pale, his green skin did. He clutched at an invisible throat, flipped and tumbled midair, spewing tears and complaints. Ugh! It smells worse than a troll's armpit, worse than Snape's storeroom. Murder! Help me! He didn't stick around to protest. With a final, wailing shriek, he rocketed through the ceiling and disappeared. Silence slammed down, all eyes fixed on the calm, elegant girl by the fire, surrounded by the offending steam. The contrast was too much, serene composure amid gaseous chaos. Just then the common room door opened. Cedric Diggory, fresh from the Quidditch celebration and still faintly smelling of butterbeer, stepped in. The smell hit him and his stride faltered. Surprise flickered over his handsome features. He masked it quickly. Instead of recoiling, he looked straight through the pale green haze and found Jiang Wu standing by the cauldron. While everyone else glared, gagged, or backed away, Cedric, Hufflepuff's prefect, walked forward with calm, steady steps. He stopped in front of the pot and leaned in slightly, watching the red-tinged oil on the surface, the pristine white noodles, and the generous toppings. There was no disgust in his hazel eyes, only genuine curiosity and a small, encouraging smile. Jiang Wu, he said softly. It smells very unique. Is it Eastern food? It looks rich. Could I try some? Chapter 10. The fairy filter is shattered. Cedric's words hit like a match tossed into a powder keg. The whole Hufflepuff common room erupted. Is Cedric crazy? Merlin's short shorts. He's actually going to eat that? A champion. This is a true Hufflepuff champion. People forgot to hold their noses. They stared at their beloved prefect as if he were about to battle a Hungarian horntail rather than a steaming bowl of luocefen. Jiang Wu froze too. For the first time, there was real, unmistakable bewilderment in her cool eyes. She hadn't expected Cedric to volunteer to try the biochemical weapon that even Peeves had fled from. Cedric's gentle amber gaze and encouraging smile made refusal impossible. It's very spicy, she warned flatly, her voice steady but carrying a faint, almost imperceptible tension if one listened closely. It's fine, I can handle spicy food, Cedric replied, smiling, even a little eager. Jiang Wu quietly summoned a clean pair of chopsticks and a small bowl. With the same poised grace she used in a tea ceremony, she lifted a tangle of rice noodles from the cauldron, saturated with red oil, added sour bamboo shoots, yuba, and golden-fried tofu skin, and handed the bowl to Cedric. Everyone held their breath. Even Fred and George, squeezed in the doorway, were silent with anticipation. The aroma hit Cedric as soon as he took the bowl. He wrinkled his nose, but his expression stayed determined. Awkward with chopsticks, he managed to pick up a few strands of noodles, blew on them, and put them in his mouth. 1 second. 2 seconds. He chewed and then froze. His face registered an attempt to parse an astonishingly complex storm of flavors. The acid bite of the bamboo shoots, the heat of the chili oil, the deep richness of the bone broth, the silky texture of the noodles, tastes colliding and combining in his mouth. Just when everyone braced for disaster, Cedric's eyes suddenly lit up. He murmured, his brows relaxing. His chewing quickened, and he reached for another piece of yuba soaked in broth. Wow, this is amazing. Sour, spicy, fresh. It's addictive. The more you eat, the more you want to eat. A fine sheen of sweat appeared on his forehead, and his lips were flushed from the spice, but his smile was radiant. He looked at Jiang Wu with shining eyes. It's really delicious. Jiang Wu, what is this? A stunned silence fell over the common room. So complete a pin could have dropped and no one would have heard it. Their handsome, dignified prefect, Cedric Diggory, actually loved this notorious-smelling dish and was eating it with relish. Jiang Wu looked at his spice-stung, satisfied face and felt something crack in her usual tightly held composure. A warm mixture of recognition and amusement rose in her, happy that someone liked her food, entertained by watching him brave the heat, and a tiny, mischievous pride. Without worrying about appearances, she scooped up a big mouthful and slurped it loudly, cheeks puffed, steam rising as she hissed from the spice. "Luocifen," she said in that cool, clear voice, with a faint smugness. "Refreshing." Red oil splashed onto the cuff of her plain white robe, unnoticed. The silence that followed collapsed into raw laughter. Hannah Abbott clapped her hands and laughed so hard she banged the table. Susan Bones laughed until tears stood in her eyes. Even Fred and George were doubled over in the doorway, slapping each other with delight. Jiang Wu said it, and she said refreshing. She actually eats like that. It's splashed on her clothes. Cedric actually likes it, and it's addictive. Our Eastern fairy filter is shattered all over the floor. Ha 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 ha! Jiang Wu stood holding her bowl, watching her classmates explode with mirth, and then looked at Cedric, who was grimacing, laughing, and still looking at her with bright, approving eyes. A soft flush climbed both her cheeks at once. For nearly 2 months, she had kept up the cool, distant Eastern fairy persona. Now it lay in pieces, undone by a bowl of noodles and Cedric's wholehearted approval. She ducked her head, trying to hide the red in her face with the bowl. Even her ear tips were faintly pink. The smell of Luocifen hung in the firelight, vivid and impossible to ignore. Cedric watched her rare, embarrassed expression and the merry chaos around them and let out a warm, inclusive little chuckle, as if to say, "See, this is even better." From that day on, Hogwarts knew 2 things about Hufflepuff's Jiang Wu. The delicate, fairy-like girl from the East grew vegetables and cooked biochemical weapons that could send Peeves packing, and she was an incurable, unabashedly enthusiastic eater whenever Luocifen was involved. And their prefect, Cedric Diggory, seemed to have an unusual fondness for, and tolerance of, this two-sided, utterly charming junior. Chapter 11. Halloween Garments and 3-Life Cake. Hogwarts on Halloween was drenched in celebration. Bat-shaped pastries and paper bats drifted through the air, grinning jack-o'-lanterns lined the tables, and mischievous ghosts flitted down the corridors, playing harmless pranks. Jiang Wu, however, sat in her dormitory, unwrapping an exquisite camphor wood box from Qixia Stream, sealed with a shrinking charm. Inside was an outfit made for the feast. Not a Hogwarts robe, but a modified set with a distinctly Chinese elegance. A stand-collared, narrow-sleeved long shirt embroidered with a dark bamboo pattern matched to a horse-face skirt. From a distance, the fabric looked like plain, inky black. Up close, dark bamboo motifs woven in thread, the same color shimmered faintly as light moved across them, appearing and disappearing with an aloof, refined grace. The lapels and cuffs were edged with tiny silver thread Taoist cloud seal talismans, said to ward off evil and soothe the spirit. She loosely gathered her dark hair with a glossy mutton-fat jade hairpin, leaving a few tendrils to frame her face. Her jade-white skin and otherworldly beauty became even more pronounced. When she stepped into the entrance of the Great Hall, the ruckus hushed for a moment. Hundreds of eyes turned to her, curiosity, admiration, a little bewilderment. Even pure-blood students, used to ostentatious dress, found themselves admitting the unique presence of this Eastern garment. "Merlin, she looks like she stepped out of an ancient painting," Penelope Clearwater breathed from Ravenclaw. "Are those patterns moving?" Ron blurted, eyes wide. "They're just catching the light," Hermione corrected, though her face showed admiration. "Very elegant." Professor McGonagall at the teacher's table gave a slight approving nod, and Dumbledore's half-moon spectacles glittered with interest. Jiang Wu ignored the attention and walked straight to the Hufflepuff table. Cedric was already seated. When he saw her, a brief flash of admiration softened into a warm smile as he pulled out the chair beside him. "Jiang Wu, you look very special tonight," he said. "Thank you," she replied quietly, settling into the borrowed seat. The inky outfit struck an unexpected harmony with Hufflepuff's yellow and black. She then produced several multi-tiered bamboo-woven food boxes from a magical brocade pouch. When she opened them, a delicate sweet scent, flowers, fruit, and baked grain, wafted through the air, cutting through the great hall's usual aromas of roasted meat and sugared treats. Hannah Abbott leaned forward, curiosity written all over her face. "What is that?" she asked. "Pastries from my hometown," Jiang Wu said, distributing the boxes. Students clustered around, eager. "In my region, Halloween, what we also call Han Yijie or Sanyuanji, is a time to honor ancestors, pray for blessings, and ward off misfortune. These are called three-life cake and higanbana pastry." The three-life cake was made of glutinous rice flour mixed with mugwort juice, sweetened with osmanthus honey, and filled with lotus seed paste. It came in 3 soft, layered colors: jade green, amber yellow, lotus root pink, chewy and sweet, meant to symbolize the completeness of past, present, and future lives. The higanbana pastry was even more delicate. Flaky pastry folded around a sweet and sour filling of roselle and plum jam, baked into the shape of a blooming flower with golden, crispy petal edges. A tiny dewdrop of boiled sugar sat in the center of each bloom. They were as beautiful to look at as they were delicious, sweet without cloying, with an elegant Eastern flavor that quickly won over the Hufflepuff table. "Oh my goodness, this is amazing!" someone exclaimed. "This flower is so pretty, I almost can't eat it," another whispered. "Jiang Wu, you're brilliant." She watched their surprised, delighted faces and felt a faint warmness loosen the usual coolness around her eyes. Picking up a higanbana pastry, she offered it to Cedric. "Try one," she said. Cedric turned the pastry over in his hands like it was a small work of art, then glanced at her profile, softened by the lamplight. His smile deepened. "Thank you," he said. He bit carefully. The crisp pastry shattered, then the sweet and sour filling with its floral notes spread across his tongue, an unfamiliar, delightful sensation. "That's wonderful, Jiang Wu," he said, "like ripe berries in an autumn wood." She nodded slightly, feeling the heat rise to her ears, and took a modest bite of her own three-life cake. Soft and subtly fragrant, it was comfort wrapped in tradition. For the moment, the Hufflepuff table glowed with warmth and friendliness, everyone sharing food and stories as the Great Hall carried on its Halloween revels. Chapter 12. Difficulties at Slytherin and the Great-Grandmother Incident. Jiang Wu's extravagant Halloween outfit and the snacks she brought had been a sensation, and that drew its share of hostile looks. The reaction was loudest from Slytherin, especially Draco Malfoy and his cronies, Crabbe and Goyle. A few days later, during potions, Professor Snape showed his usual favoritism toward Slytherin and took every opportunity to belittle the other houses. Jiang Wu and her partner, a nervous Hufflepuff boy, managed to brew a clear, faintly purple, shimmering scabies potion, thanks to Jiang Wu's precise control of heat and the way she fused ingredients with her subtle, practiced magic. Snape merely glowered and, in his oily voice, sneered, "Barely passing, Hufflepuff. At least you didn't blow up your cauldron." Then, with his habitual cruelty, he docked points from Harry, whose potion had been a touch less vivid. After class, in the cold corridor leading to the dungeons, Malfoy stepped out with that familiar smirk and blocked Jiang Wu's path. Crabbe and Goyle loomed behind him like 2 boulders. "Look who it is, our noble Eastern Miss," he drawled, his gray-blue eyes sweeping over her plain school robes. She'd already changed back into them, and taking in the memory of her Halloween clothes and snacks with undisguised contempt. "Heard you dressed like you were going to a Muggle funeral and brought those village snacks to win over the stupid badgers. Really, unique taste." Nearby Slytherins snickered into their sleeves. Jiang Wu stopped and met Malfoy's gaze without expression. Her silence and the calm in her eyes made his taunts feel petty. That irritated him. "What? Don't understand English?" He raised his voice, ramping up the provocation. "Or do you Easterners just hide behind flashy clothes and cloying food? I hear you can't even cast a proper spell. Coaxing a mandrake with singing doesn't count as real skill." He mocked her humming, and Crabbe and Goyle guffawed clumsily. Students passing the corridor slowed, curious or concerned. Hermione frowned nearby. Ron looked ready to spring forward, but Harry held him back. Jiang Wu stayed silent, tilting her head as if weighing Malfoy's words. Just when Malfoy assumed she was cowed, she spoke, calm, clear, and perfectly enunciated. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried. "My great-grandfather, the 7th elder of the Jiang clan, once subdued a flood dragon that stirred storms and spoke like a man in the East Sea 300 years ago." She paused and let her gaze sweep over Malfoy's pale face. That flood dragon talked a lot. The corridor fell into stunned silence for a heartbeat. Then someone burst out laughing. The suppressed laughter that followed rippled across the halls. Ravenclaws smothering chuckles, Hufflepuffs openly laughing, a few Slytherins trying to contain their amusement while their shoulders shook. Malfoy's face went an angry, sullen shade of red. Jiang Wu's line, translated plainly, meant, "The monsters my family dealt with were chattier than you. Your little insults aren't even worth their trouble." You dare!" Malfoy stammered, trembling with fury, his wand half drawn. "Draco," a stern voice cut through. Gemma Farley, a seventh-year Slytherin prefect, stepped forward frowning. She disliked Jiang Wu's showing off, but she hated Malfoy's shameless public bullying of a younger student even more. "That's enough. Back to the common room. Don't disgrace Slytherin here." She shot a complex, chilly look at Jiang Wu, part warning, part appraisal, but said no more, seizing Malfoy and dragging him away. Jiang Wu adjusted the strap of her backpack as if she'd just brushed aside an annoying fly. Under a scatter of admiring, amused, and astonished glances, she walked out of the corridor with steady steps, giving nothing away. Only a few sharp-eyed students noticed the faint, almost imperceptible upward twitch at the corner of her mouth as she turned. After that, the Slytherins, Malfoy's gang in particular, gave her a new nickname, the Great-Grandmother. It was meant to mock and to grind teeth, but it carried a grudging, uneasy edge as well. Chapter 13. Ravenclaw's Eagle Ring and the Classic of Mountains and Seas. While Jiang Wu was searching the library's rare books section for records on cultivating ancient magical plants, she ran into an unexpected interruption. The bronze eagle knocker at the Ravenclaw common room door had stopped someone. The knocker wasn't addressing her. It was posing a riddle to a Ravenclaw student trying to enter. "Where can that which has vanished be found?" it demanded. The Ravenclaw student scratched his head. "In memories? In history books?" "Not deep enough," the eagle rumbled, rejecting the answer. In the long river of time?" "Too vague," it said again, and the student gave up, dejected. The eagle knocker then turned its cold, bronze head toward Jiang Wu as she passed by. "Seeker of wisdom from a foreign land, do you have an answer?" Jiang Wu stopped. She had long heard of Ravenclaw's tests of wit, but she had never expected to be questioned herself. She met the eagle's gaze, and an image from a yellowing book at the Chixia Stream Library sprang to mind. The Classic of Mountains and Seas. In the section about the Western Great Wilderness, it told of a goddess named Ba, or Nuba. Chio battled the Yellow Emperor and called on the lords of wind and rain. The Yellow Emperor sent down the heavenly maiden Ba. The rain ceased, and Chio was slain. Ba could not return to the heavens. Where she remained, no rain would fall. Those who wished to drive her away cried, "Spirit, go north. First clear the waterways, dredge and open the ditches." After a moment, she answered in a clear, cool voice. "The tale of Ba is telling. She stopped the storm and left her power in the great wilderness, turning a vast stretch into barren land. That is disappearance. But she did not vanish without leaving a trace. The injunction, 'Spirit, go north,' is not a compass heading so much as an instruction to clear and open channels, to dredge, to make a passage. So what has vanished can be found at its last resting place and along the paths that lead to it." The bronze eagle was silent for a full 10 seconds. Its metal eyes seemed to brighten. Then it made a satisfied metallic click, like gears settling into place. "Profound. You have deconstructed disappearance and trace with an ancient allegory, balancing philosophy and practicality. Wisdom grants you passage." With that, the door to the Ravenclaw Tower swung open. The Ravenclaw student who had been turned away stared at Jiang Wu in shocked admiration. Heads popped out from the doorway. Several Ravenclaws had clearly heard the exchange. "Oh my God! She answered it! And with an ancient Eastern myth. What is that Ba she mentioned? It sounds so mysterious." "That's amazing! What's her name?" "Jiang Wu from Hufflepuff." Jiang Wu had no intention of going up into Ravenclaw Tower. She simply nodded at the still-stunned student and went on with her books. But word of the incident spread quickly through Ravenclaw. Before long, Ravenclaw students, especially those studying ancient magic and mythology, kept running into her in the library and corridors, eager to ask about Eastern legends, philosophies, and magical creatures. Jiang Wu still spoke little, but when questions fell within her expertise, she answered briefly and precisely. Her concise knowledge won her respect and a number of bookish friends in Ravenclaw. Some of them even gave her a nickname in private, the Walking Eastern Grimoire. Chapter 14, Gemini Improvement and Quidditch Mystery. The Weasley twins' awe of Jiang Wu and their lingering memory of the power of her fertilizer had shifted into a new kind of cooperation. They no longer dared tinker with her experimental plots. Instead, they began bringing her offerings. One afternoon, Fred and George appeared in the greenhouse as if presenting a tribute, a gaudily wrapped box cradled between them. "Jiang, our latest product, Skiving Snack Box Max," Fred whispered, eyes bright, more potent, longer lasting. George shuffled awkwardly. "There is a tiny side effect. Lee Jordan, who tried it, is still in the hospital wing. His hair turned rainbow, and he won't stop belting out Weird Sisters songs." "Since you were able to purify our improver last time," Fred continued, hopeful, "could you maybe neutralize this side effect? Make it just skip class. No singing, no hair dyeing?" Jiang Wu examined the box, then the twins' eager faces. She picked up one of the unnaturally colored sweets. A faint wisp of spiritual energy gathered at her fingertip as she probed it. Inside the candy roiled violent, chaotic, magical currents, the source of the unintended effects. Using a trace of the Qinglin wand's vitality like the finest embroidery needle, she carefully guided and smoothed those turbulent flows, disentangling them and threading in a stable strand of life energy to neutralize the excess. A few minutes later, she handed the candy back. "Try it," she said. The twins were half skeptical, half hopeful. George volunteered to eat one while Fred monitored. 10 seconds later, George's face went green and he clutched his stomach, racing for the nearest bathroom. There was no rainbow hair, no Weird Sisters serenade, just a very powerful laxative effect. "Merlin's lace socks. It worked," Fred whooped, half triumphant, half sympathetic as George disappeared. "Jiang, you're an angel sent by the god of pranks. It's still painful, but at least it's controllable. Brilliant." He thrust a large bag of prized, top-grade ingredients from Zonko's and a thick, dubious-looking tome, The Complete Guide to Prank Potions, Uncensored Edition, at her. In return, Jiang Wu accepted the bag and the book with an expression little changed. She glanced at the strange materials and thought, not without interest, that they might prove useful for cultivating certain spiritual plants. She kept her thoughts to herself and tucked the gifts away. The Quidditch season ground on. The Gryffindor-Slytherin match was vicious and dirty. While Harry chased the golden snitch, a rogue bludger seemed to single him out, relentlessly pursuing him until he narrowly escaped. He did manage to catch the snitch in the end, but not before his arm was broken. The whole episode left a sour, unsettled feeling. Watching from the stands, Jiang Wu did not focus solely on Harry's skill. She noticed several gazes from the Slytherin end that were colder and more satisfied than usual, Malfoy among them. More troubling, when the bludger struck and Harry was flung through the air, a sliver of hostile magical fluctuation brushed past her spiritual senses. It was faint, fleeting, and seemed to originate from somewhere near the teacher's table, but it was too quick to be certain. She held those suspicions close. That night in the common room, older students, including Cedric, clustered together, talking about Harry's injury and the abnormal bludger, their voices laced with scorn for Slytherin tactics and concern for Harry. Quietly, Jiang Wu pulled out the bone-mending spiritual paste her mother had sent, prepared by a special method. She slipped it to Hannah with instructions to pass it along discreetly. She knew Hermione and the others were already in the hospital wing. Madame Pomfrey was openly astonished at Harry's recovery. The paste accelerated his healing in a way that made even the infirmary matron raise an impressed eyebrow. Jiang Wu watched from afar, the small unease from earlier still present, and resolved to keep an eye on that mysterious fluctuation, and on the Slytherins who watched the pitch with too much satisfaction. Chapter 15. Mrs. Norris and the Rejuvenation Talisman. After Halloween, a chill settled over the castle. Filch's cat, Madame Norris, was found petrified in a second-floor corridor, hanging stiff from a torch bracket. Nearby, scrawled in a shiny, unsettling red paint, was a large message. "The Chamber of Secrets has been opened. Enemies of the heir, beware." Panic spread like a cold tide. the old legend of Slytherin's Chamber of Secrets resurfaced, and Slytherin's heir became a shadow over everyone's hearts. Muggle-born students were especially terrified. Hermione buried herself in thick books, desperate for answers. Ron kept muttering about his suspicious, screaming diary, though no one took him entirely seriously. Because Harry could speak Parseltongue, some eyes turned toward him in suspicion. Jiang Wu didn't know much about the Chamber's legend, but she was drawn to the misery of Madame Norris. When Dumbledore and the other professors inspected the scene, Jiang Wu stood among the distant crowd. Her keen spiritual sense picked up a trace of residual magic, cold, deathly still, similar to a dark energy she sometimes felt at the edge of the Forbidden Forest. Near the wall with the blood-like writing, she also noticed tiny, almost invisible fragments on the floor, remnants of spider legs, unnaturally stiff and withered. One afternoon, as she passed the sealed second-floor corridor, a crowd had gathered around a sobbing Colin Creevey. His tabby cat had been found by a flower pot, its body rigid and cold. It wasn't completely petrified like Madame Norris, but it lay motionless, barely breathing, clearly struck by the same unknown force. Madame Pomfrey said, "She can't cure it. Madame Norris is still there. Boo-hoo, my Mick." Colin choked out, clinging to the cat. Students looked on with sympathy and fear. Was the petrification targeting any living thing? Jiang Wu eased through the crowd and knelt. She examined Mick carefully. The cat's body was cold and stiff. Its life force was extremely weak, but not extinguished. The residual curse energy matched that she'd sensed by Madame Norris, though much weaker. A memory stirred, a low-level talisman from the Chixia Stream Library, the Huichin Talisman, a rejuvenation talisman used to dispel evil and restore vitality. Though it was usually meant for chi intrusion, perhaps it could counter this early-stage petrification. To the astonishment of everyone watching, Jiang Wu produced a sheet of talisman paper she always carried, made from a special mixture of cinnabar and plant sap, infused with spiritual energy, and a small talisman brush. Concentrating, she let her spiritual energy flow into her fingertips and, in one swift, fluid motion, drew a complex talisman across the paper. The cinnabar glowed with a faint azure light the instant she finished. She laid the paper gently on Mick's forehead and whispered, "Disperse." The azure light flared and poured into the cat like a warm stream. The cold, deathly curse energy sibilantly recoiled as if meeting its nemesis and began to dissolve. Seconds later, Mick shuddered, emitted a faint meow, and warmth returned to his body. The stiffness ebbed. He struggled to stand. Though still weak, he was alive. "Mick!" Colin cried, rushing forward and hugging his cat, laughing and sobbing at once. "Merlin, what did she do? Is it Eastern magic? She cured it. She's amazing." The students around them murmured in shock and awe. Up until now, Jiang Wu's oddities, Halloween treats, her sharp retorts to Malfoy, her cleverness with the eagle ring, had marked her as unusual. Now, after pulling a cursed cat back from the brink with a glowing piece of paper, she was wrapped in a new aura. Mysterious and powerful. Word spread through the castle like wildfire. The Hufflepuff Eastern Witch brought a cursed cat back to life with a glowing talisman. Madame Pomfrey later confirmed that Mick had only been lightly affected and wasn't fully petrified. Jiang Wu's talisman had dispelled the residual curse and stimulated the cat's own vitality. Still, in those desperate days, that was enough to give panicked students a sliver of hope, and it put Jiang Wu's name on everyone's lips. Cedric, hearing the commotion, pushed his way through the crowd and found Jiang Wu surrounded by grateful faces. She remained composed, though relief touched her features after the healing. Cedric's hazel eyes were bright with pride and a deeper admiration as he stepped to her side and asked quietly, "Are you all right?" Jiang Wu shook her head, about to answer, when something on Cedric's raised wrist caught her eye. In the fold of his robe cuff were a few almost invisible strands of spider silk, faintly glowing with an eerie blue in the dim corridor. The color matched the hue of the spine-like fragments she had seen by Madame Norris's scene, and the same pale blue as a spider's nest she had noticed near that patch of dark energy at the edge of the Forbidden Forest. A cold knot tightened in her stomach. Chamber of Secrets. Spiders. Cedric? No, this couldn't be. But those strands of silk. For the first time since arriving at Hogwarts, Jiang Wu's heart hammered with a pure, unconnected sense of crisis, sharp, insistent, and not directed at Cedric at all. Chapter 16: Edge of the Forbidden Forest and Web of Shadows. The news of Mick's revival made Jiangwu famous throughout the castle, but it also brought unexpected trouble. There were always students, especially younger ones from Muggle families, who would timidly bring a wilting pet, a cursed trinket, or a gray, cursed amulet to the entrance of the Hufflepuff common room, quietly hoping the Eastern Fairy might work her magic again. Jiangwu was inundated. She wasn't unwilling to help, but the Huichun talisman had limited effectiveness. It could only deal with faint traces of curses or life forces on the verge of extinction, and crafting one required pure spiritual power and rare materials. Worse, she could feel that repeatedly displaying that Eastern magic might draw dangerous attention. She began to avoid crowds, spending more time alone in the greenhouse or in a quiet corner of the library. Still, the image of those ghostly blue spider silks on Cedric's cuff was seared into her mind. Chamber of Secrets, spiders, a dark aura, Cedric. These seemingly unrelated points were forcibly linked by that strange thread. She didn't believe Cedric could be any sort of heir. It contradicted his warm, upright nature. Yet the silk existed. He must have touched something dangerous. She needed information. She remembered the faint spider remnants found at the scenes where Madame Norris had been hurt and where Mick had been attacked. The common spiders at Hogwarts, Aragog's descendants, were black or dark brown, thickly haired. They would never have legs with that ghostly blue, metallic sheen. This was not one of Aragog's kin. One afternoon, with no classes, Jiangwu went alone to the area near the North Tower, close to the edge of the Forbidden Forest and rarely visited. She focused her spiritual power into her eyes and fingertips like a precise instrument, searching the ground, wall crevices, and stone joints for any trace of that strange spider. The wind was bitter, teasing her dark hair. "What are you looking for, Jiangwu?" a gentle voice asked from behind. Her head snapped up. She retracted her power and turned. Cedric stood a few steps away, a few tiny snowflakes clinging to his shoulders, his hazel eyes full of concern and a faint, questioning look. He had just come back from Quidditch practice. His broom was still under his arm. "Nothing," Jiangwu said reflexively, though her gaze flicked to his cuff. There was no silk today. Cedric didn't press. He stepped closer and peered toward the spot she'd been scanning, his brow tightening. "This place is close to the forest. It isn't safe, especially right now. You shouldn't be here by yourself." His concern was genuine. Jiangwu hesitated, looking into his open, warm face. The doubts she'd been nursing about the spider silk threatened to spill out, but she only nodded. Cedric was about to say more when a faint, spine-chilling rustling rose from the bushes at the edge of the Forbidden Forest. It was dense and rapid, like countless tiny claws scraping dry leaves. Both of them turned, alert. What poured from the depths of the forest was a tide of spiders no larger than fingernails. They swept out like a living black wave, utterly different from the acromantulas of the forest. Their bodies were sheathed in a dull, rusty metallic carapace, their legs long, sharp, and glinting, and they moved with terrifying speed. Most unsettling was their uniform direction. They were streaming toward the castle as if drawn by a single invisible summons. "Merlin." Cedric's face went white. He stepped in front of Jiangwu, shielding her, and drew his wand. "What are those things?" Jiangwu's pupils snapped tight. Her spiritual sense screamed a warning. The aura from the spiders was cold, dead, and ill-omened, similar to the residual petrification curse she had felt and to the sensation the ghostly blue silk had given her, though far weaker in concentration. "Be careful. Their aura, it's foul," she warned softly, and slipped her Qinglin wand from her sleeve. She sent a faint thread of life energy forward as a test. The nearest metallic spiders hissed from the contact, a sharp, painful sound, then stiffened and twitched. A few dissolved into a smoking black puddle as if burned away. The tide behind them halted, the rustling turning confused and frantic. Cedric seized the moment. Incendio! A wall of flames sprang up, not blazing high, but enough to halt the spider surge. The little creatures circled the fire, skittering back and forth with a teeth-grinding scrape, clearly reluctant to cross it. "Let's go!" Cedric grabbed Jiangwu's wrist and pulled her away. "We have to tell a professor." They retreated quickly from the North Tower area. As they ran, Jiangwu glanced back at the black tide. still held by the flames and restless. A storm of realization churned in her. These spiders feared life force. They were being driven toward the castle by some external pull. They had to be connected to the petrification incidents, and the ghostly blue silk on Cedric's cuff, had it come from a more powerful mother controlling these tiny spiders? Whatever he had encountered in the Forbidden Forest was dangerous, and it had left traces. Chapter 17. Christmas gifts and silent guardian panic in the castle reached a new peak after the Spider-Tide incident. Filch stepped up his patrols, the professors wore grim expressions, and rumors that the monster of Slytherin was some kind of horrific spider ran wild. Dumbledore personally coordinated efforts to strengthen Hogwarts' defenses, especially around the edges of the Forbidden Forest. As Christmas approached, a thin wash of festive warmth softened the school's tension. The Great Hall was draped in silver and white. A towering Christmas tree stood by the staff table, and enchanted snowflakes drifted lazily from the enchanted ceiling. The air smelled of roast turkey and honey. Students who stayed for the holidays exchanged small gifts. Jiang Wu received several packages. From her father came rolls of precious Taoist talismanic texts. From her mother, exquisite Eastern silk that was more ornamental than practical, and several boxes of high-quality spiritual tea. Her Hufflepuff roommates left little, earnest presents. Hannah gave her a fluffy Niffler doll, because Hannah was always collecting plant materials. Jiang Wu had prepared return gifts too, fragrant sachets filled with calming herbs and flowers from the greenhouse for her roommates. She hesitated a long time over Cedric's present. At last, she chose a dark, smooth wooden box. Inside lay a green jade pendant she had personally selected and infused with spiritual energy. The front was finely microcarved with a cluster of bamboo, vivid and resilient, standing tall against wind and snow, and the back bore a tiny Taoist peace talisman carved into the stone to offer protection and calm the mind. The pendant hung on a dark green silk cord. She didn't write a card. She only tucked a small packet of her own herbal tea into the bottom of the box, something warm and restorative for cold Quidditch training. On Christmas Eve, the corridor in front of the common room fireplace was piled with gifts. Jiang Wu's dark wooden box caught the firelight. She picked it up, feeling the pendant's warm spiritual hum through the wood, and walked over to where Cedric was chatting with friends. "Merry Christmas," she said, her voice still cool. Cedric blinked, surprised, and then a bright, grateful smile lit his face. "Thank you. Merry Christmas, Jiang Wu." He opened the box there on the spot. The jade pendant gleamed softly under the fireplace glow. The tiny carved bamboo seemed to pulse with life. When Cedric touched it, the stone felt smooth and warm, and a gentle calm flowed through his fingers. His eyes shone with appreciation and emotion as he cradled the pendant. It's really special. I love it. Thank you." He looked at her with a warmth that outshone the flames. Jiang Wu, uncomfortable with such obvious affection, nodded and slipped back to her corner. She picked up the gift he had given her, an antique brass watering can etched with magical plant motifs, clearly chosen for her love of the greenhouse. Inside was a small packet of rare sunlight orchid seeds from Peru, a notoriously difficult magical plant that needed intense light but produced breathtaking flowers. The thoughtful gift warmed something inside Jiang Wu's cool eyes. She ran a hand over the cool brass and felt the care behind it. That cozy holiday moment shattered with terrible news. Hermione Granger had been petrified. She'd been found in the corridor outside the second-floor girls' restroom, clutching a torn scrap of paper. When Professor McGonagall announced it, the Great Hall fell deathly quiet. Muggle-born students went pale. Ron was devastated, Harry's fists clenched, eyes hard with anger and determination. Jiang Wu's heart dropped. Hermione, brilliant, stubborn, fiercely righteous, was now a statue. She remembered Hermione arguing for house elf rights in the kitchens, remembered her always rushing past with a book clutched to her chest. Jiang Wu went to the hospital wing and peered through the window. Hermione and Madame Norris lay there like cold stone. Between Hermione's stiff fingers, Jiang Wu's sharp eyesight caught a few blurred words at the edge of the paper. Pipes, sound, basilisk, basilisk. Her pulse sped. An entry in an old bestiary stored in the Ravenclaw Tower flashed into her mind. Basilisk, king of serpents, Deadly gaze, able to move through pipes, and creatures like spiders fled from it. Everything clicked. Petrification suggested an indirectly fatal gaze, the disappearance of the castle's spiders, references to pipes on the wall and the restroom, that chilling, deathly presence, basilisk. The monster of Slytherin was not a spider at all. She glanced at Cedric. He stood nearby, his face pale and serious, worried for his classmates and burning with anger toward whoever was responsible. She remembered the faint blue spider silk that had once stained his sleeve. A terrible possibility unfurled in her mind. Had Cedric, during Quidditch practice in the Forbidden Forest, come near a pipe exit where a basilisk might hide? Or had he disturbed a nest of special spiders driven from their home by the serpent? The thought made the blood in her veins run cold. The danger of a basilisk was beyond what anyone had imagined. Cedric's Quidditch training, his prefect patrols, any careless proximity, each could put him directly in harm's way. Jiangwu could not stand idle. This was not about proving anything. It was about protecting a fragile warmth she had only just allowed herself to feel. The sense of belonging that had come with this place, and the young man who had steadied her on the platform, handed her dragon manure fertilizer in the greenhouse, genuinely said, "Delicious," when she fed him luocefen despite its toxic gas, shone on the Quidditch pitch, and smiled when he received the jade pendant. She slid her hand into her sleeve to touch her Chinglin wand, fingers tightening around the warm jade pendant in her pocket. For the first time, a fierce, unshakable flame lit in her cool eyes. Chamber of Secrets, basilisk, air, whatever lurked in the castle, if it meant to hurt the people she cared about, it would have to reckon with her family's talismans and the spirit plants raised on breath soil first. Chapter 18, Pansy's Little Trick and the Spiritual Plant's Counterattack. Hermione's petrification hung over the castle like a boulder, heavy and unmoving, especially for Gryffindor and the Muggle-born students. Harry and Ron had become elusive, moving about as if investigating something in secret, but their progress was halting. The castle's atmosphere had turned as oppressive as frozen ice, snuffing out whatever warmth the Christmas season had left. In that suffocating quiet, Slytherin's resentment toward Jiangwu, particularly among a small circle around Draco Malfoy, finally found an outlet. Malfoy himself, still reeling from the embarrassment caused by his great-grandmother incident and an awkward corridor confrontation, dared not act personally. His faithful follower, Pansy Parkinson, stepped forward instead. She had long disliked Jiangwu, the Eastern girl's aloof manner, her extravagant clothes, the way she'd stolen the show at Halloween with her treats, and, most of all, the public's slight about Malfoy's ancestry. Now Jiangwu's reputation had only grown, rumors of saving a cat and of mysterious Eastern magic that might counter petrification made Pansy's jealousy and spite boil over. The opportunity came one afternoon after Charms. Jiangwu was walking alone down a quiet corridor toward the greenhouse when Pansy and two followers, Millicent Bulstrode and another Slytherin girl, stepped out from around a corner and blocked her path. "Oh, look who it is, our esteemed Eastern healer," Pansy sneered, folding her arms and wearing a fake smile. "Busy saving those poor, cursed little animals, or planning to use your Eastern secret art to pry Granger out of the stone?" Millicent let out a rough chuckle. The other girl sneered at Jiangwu's plain robes. Jiangwu stopped without expression. With the basilisk threat still hanging over the school, she had no wish to make trouble. "Move aside," she said, her voice clear and cold, carrying an unmistakable edge of command. "Move aside? Why should we?" Pansy took a step closer. The smile fell away and malice showed through. "Who do you think you are? Some flashy tricks and a few homemade snacks for the stupid badgers, and you actually think you're important? And you had the nerve to talk back to Draco." She snapped her wand out and aimed it at Jiangwu. "Today, you pretentious Eastern mudblood will learn a lesson." "Expelliarmus!" Pansy cried, sending a jet of red light toward Jiangwu's wand hand. "Den Saojo!" Millicent followed, aiming a hideous spell at Jiangwu's face. Jiangwu's eyes narrowed. The spiritual energy inside her flowed, light and swift. She moved with the grace of Eastern technique, a deceptively slight sidestep that let the red light of the disarming charm sweep past her. Her wand, a slender chinglin, never rose. Instead, she gave a nearly imperceptible flick of her wrist. A soft but persistent emerald green screen blossomed in front of her, like a shield woven from the toughest iron thread vines. Millicent's densaujo struck it with a dull thud and was muffled, decomposed and absorbed by that living, vibrant barrier without so much as a ripple. Pansy and her companions stood stunned. What sort of magic was this? A silent cast, a defensive charm? While they were still dazed, Jiangwu acted. Without speaking, she slipped her left hand into the wide sleeve of her robe and pinched something small and hidden in the lining, a few iron thread vine seeds she always kept in her pouch. Spiritual energy gathered at her fingertips like a catalyst, instantly waking the fierce life within the seeds. 3 dark, glossy, hair-thin vines shot out from her sleeve like living snakes. They were astonishingly fast, and their aim was precise, not at Pansy or her friends' bodies, but at their wands. Snap, snap, snap. In 3 crisp sounds, the vines wrapped tightly around Pansy's, Millicent's, and the other girls' wands. The vine's strength was relentless, an iron grip that tightened the more the girls struggled. "My wand!" Pansy screamed. "Let go! What is this? It hurts! It's tightening!" They flailed and pulled, but the more they fought, the more their wrists ached. Their wands were bound fast. Spells were impossible. Jiangwu stood calm and still, her expression unreadable. Her cold, clear eyes swept over the 3 frantic girls with a message that needed no words. They had brought this on themselves. "You monster! Let go!" Pansy cried, half crying now from the pain and humiliation. Jiangwu raised her hand gently. Her fingertips twitched. The 3 iron thread vines, as if obeying a command, loosened instantly and slithered back into her sleeve like dark streaks. Only faint red marks rimmed Pansy's and the others' wrists, and their wands lay on the floor. "If you provoke me again," Jiangwu said finally, her voice colder than the wind that swept through Hogwarts, "next time, it won't be only your wands that get tangled." She didn't stop to watch them scramble for their wands. Her robes brushed past them as she walked away, aloof, unbothered, leaving a chill in her wake that left Pansy shaking. There had been no audience for the encounter, but word spread quietly through Slytherin. Pansy and her companions were too embarrassed to make a scene, but their stung expressions traveled by rumor. Fear of Jiangwu grew. Quiet nicknames, Eastern Monster, the Iron Vine Witch, began to circulate. Students from other houses reinforced their belief that the Hufflepuff first year had inscrutable Eastern abilities. Jiangwu had shown, in a single controlled motion, that her silly side was for friends and for good food. In the face of malice, she was a thorny green bamboo, a winding thicket not to be trifled with. Chapter 19, Two-Way Mirror and Mother's Warning. Pansy's provocation had been only a minor irritation. What really worried Jiangwu was the way things at the castle were getting darker and the danger Cedric might be in. She started searching more actively for information about the basilisk, slipping into the restricted section of the library more often, using her strong spiritual energy to bypass some of the lower-level protective charms, and even trying to sense the dark aura that haunted the castle's ancient pipes with the breathing earth seed. She made little headway. Late one night, she sat in a corner of the common room by the hearth, reading an old Egyptian account about dealing with snake-like magical creatures. The record mentioned that a rooster's crow could suppress a basilisk. As she read, a sapphire-inlaid, antique bronze mirror in her pouch began to vibrate faintly and glow with a soft white light. Jiangwu's heart tightened. She picked up the mirror. The surface rippled like water, then resolved into the face of her mother, Isabella Bones, still beautiful but deeply worried. A hint of anxiety threaded through it. She wore a deep purple velvet dressing gown, and behind her was the study of the Bones family manor. "Awoo!" Isabella's voice came through the two-way mirror, distorted in the way magical communication often was, but urgent and very real. "I've heard what's happening at Hogwarts. The Chamber of Secrets opened? A Slytherin monster? People being petrified? This is far too dangerous." Jiangwu felt a tug of warmth at seeing her mother's rare display of anxiety, but she kept her face calm. "I'm fine, Mother." "Fine?" Isabella's tone hardened. "It will be too late once something happens to you. I warned your father. School is a source of danger. Listen, Awu, the Bones family keeps old records. About Slytherin's Chamber of Secrets, the legend says a basilisk sleeps inside. Its gaze can kill outright. Even seeing it indirectly causes petrification. This is not something you can handle on your own. Hearing her mother say the word basilisk made Jiang Wu's stomach drop. Isabella's expression grew even more grave. I've used some family resources to look into this. This probably isn't just an heir's prank. There's a whisper at the ministry that someone is trying to fish in troubled waters, someone who might be targeting Dumbledore, or the stability of Hogwarts itself. Your father also noticed that forces from the Hogwarts side are paying attention, though we don't know their goals. Wu, this water is too deep. You must leave at once. I've already contacted Flu Network Management. Tomorrow. Mother. Jiang Wu interrupted, her voice low but unusually firm. I can't leave. Isabella's face in the mirror froze. Why? I have friends here, people I care about. Her gaze slid over the warm glow of the hearth and the empty chair where Cedric often sat. The basilisk is dangerous, but if everyone runs away in fear, who will protect those who can't leave? Who will stop that heir? She tightened her hand around the Qinglin wand hidden in her sleeve. Besides, I'm not without the ability to protect myself. Isabella stared at the resolve in her daughter's clear, cold eyes. Anger, worry, helplessness, and, beneath them, a trace of fierce private pride crossed her features. She was silent for a long moment, then sighed, her tone softening with exhaustion and concern. I knew it. You're stubborn like your father. I can't force you to come home, but you must promise me something. Absolutely promise. Don't try to be a hero. Protect yourself. If you find yourself facing danger you cannot overcome, activate the two-way mirror's emergency teleportation rune. It will whisk you straight to the Bones family safe house. Do you understand? I understand, Mother, Jiang Wu said softly. Isabella hesitated, then lowered her voice. And be careful of a name. Tom Riddle. In some of the Bones family's old archives, his name is vaguely connected to the opening of the Chamber of Secrets 50 years ago. He is dangerous. If he still exists in any form, stay away. Tom Riddle. Jiang Wu filed the name away. The mirror's light faded, and her mother's image vanished. Jiang Wu sat holding the warm bronze, feeling heavier than before. Her mother's warning confirmed the horror of the basilisk and hinted at an even darker current beneath the incident. Yet her resolve grew clearer. She would stay to protect the castle that had become her home, to protect those warm, familiar people, especially to protect him. Chapter 20. Marauder's Map and Night Watch. Her mother's warning and the name Tom Riddle gave Jiang Wu's investigation a new direction. She tore through the library, hunting for school histories, old newspapers, anything that might mention Tom Riddle from 50 years ago. But the name seemed to have been scrubbed clean. Only a few scant records remained. Slytherin prefect, student body president, a special contribution award, and then nothing. His whereabouts after graduation listed as unknown. The trail had all but vanished. Panic in the castle only grew. Another Ravenclaw second year had been found petrified near the library, and the school board's temporary suspension of Dumbledore had only made matters worse. It felt as if the castle's defenses had been breached. One evening, in a dusty corner of the restricted section, Jiang Wu was trying to use a trace of her spiritual power to sense a copy of Hogwarts' secrets sealed by powerful enchantments. Her fingers brushed a hidden catch on a shelf, and a mechanism clicked. A tattered book with a blank cover toppled from the top shelf and nearly hit her. She picked it up. It was surprisingly light, its pages yellowed and brittle. On impulse, she channeled a sliver of spiritual energy into it. I solemnly swear that I am up to no good. Ink flowed across the blank cover in a line of elegant script. The book sprang to life. Its pages fanned themselves, and a web of delicate lines spread until an impossibly detailed map of Hogwarts lay before her. Corridors, classrooms, secret passages, even the moving staircases were drawn with perfect clarity. Tiny ink dots dotted the map, each labeled. Filch, patrolling the second-floor corridor. Peeves, causing mischief in the trophy room. Harry Potter, Ron Weasley, huh? Their Gryffindor Tower? No, that dot is opposite the Barnabas the Barmy tapestry on the 8th floor. What are they doing loitering in front of an empty wall? Minerva McGonagall, in the headmistress's office? Wait, the dot in the headmaster's office is Albus Dumbledore? He's still at school? Jiang Wu stared. This was nothing short of miraculous, a device that could see everything inside the castle. Her mind immediately turned to the basilisk. If it was moving through the plumbing, could this map show it? She scanned the map obsessively, sweeping over pipes and disused rooms. There were no dots labeled basilisk or any large, unknown creatures. Maybe the map only tracked people, or perhaps the basilisk had some way of concealing itself. Then her eyes caught a dot outside the castle, at the edge of the forbidden forest. A single label read, Rubus Hagrid. The dot showed him standing at the door of his hut, looking around nervously. Hagrid, Forbidden Forest. The memory of the metallic spider swarm she and Cedric had encountered at the forest's edge flashed through her mind. Those spiders had recoiled from life force and had been driven toward the castle. Hagrid, as gamekeeper, knew the forest better than anyone. Maybe he knew something. Two new dots suddenly blinked into being near Hagrid's hut, right at the forest's edge. Names appeared beside them. Cedric Diggory, Jiang Wu. Jiang Wu snapped her head up. She was sitting in the library. How could the map show her at the edge of the forbidden forest? Unless the map updated in real time. Cedric was out in the forest now? At night? The image of him alone in the dark sent a cold spike of fear through her. Between the metallic spiders, the possibility of the basilisk coming out of the plumbing, and Hagrid's evident anxiety, there were too many dangers. She shut the book so fast the cover clicked shut, and the script on it rearranged itself into mischief managed. She shoved the map into her pouch, heart hammering, and bolted from the library. Like an arrow loosed from a bow, she darted down the empty corridors, racing for the forbidden forest.